This design makes a beautiful dahlia. It's not as difficult as it looks, but it does make quite a large cane. I used Primo brand orange, purple, and pomegranate red. Also white and white translucent. Of course, I don't use the full 2-ounce block. This is, I guess, 1 ounce. And then I'm going to mix the purple and the red, and so I want just a little less than 1 ounce of each, or ½ ounce of each, because even mixed up I want this a little bit less than the orange. Oops, those lines on that block were running the other direction. There we go. So when I mix those up, I'll have a nice dark reddish purple. So these are my colors. And also some white, and of course background. We will make a stack of these colors, but first we need to save some for the center, which we will make later. So here's the rest of it. We're going to make the gradients, and I love this way of mixing up gradients because sometimes I give you the color recipe, but it's difficult to come up with the same amount of each different mix. So check this out. It's just like a Skinner blend if you think about it. Okay, on the measurements in the PDF, that's 6 centimeters, 7 centimeters, 6 centimeters, and then 3.5 centimeters. And then you fill it in. But the important thing really, I mean, you can just look at it, eyeball this, do that at any size. The idea is that, you know, that first one has some white, and then it goes all the way to the solid, dark, reddish purple. Fill that in. There'll be plenty of that reddish purple later for something for the rest of the center. But now we're not going to blend it like a Skinner blend. We'll separate it, and there's my 5 gradients. I mean, I haven't tried it as a Skinner blend. I just thought it worked this way very well. A lot of contrast. You'll see how much contrast is in that. Now I'll stack it up just by hand. Pasta machine would be too thin. The idea is to have a stack of clay. It's fairly squishy clay, fairly soft. I guess it's a relative term. Now I'll use my spatula and bring 2 lines down, kind of on either side of that block. Not all the way, about halfway. That spatula catches all that dark clay and pulls it through. See how that's kind of on either end? Do the same thing with the light orange, pulling it down. And that is going to turn into a petal shape. The first thing we want to do is stretch that light color because I want the whole color outlined in that light orange, and that's an easy way to do it. This will be the difficult part, squishing it all together. Those 2 will actually come together as a point so that those lines get pointed in. Those lines will follow the curve of the petal, and those will really be the shape of the petal. The top eventually will be pressed all the way to a point. See, I'm spreading out that outline color right to the very bottom strip. Do you see the parallel lines where the original indentations were made? Kind of helps you keep that part parallel. And I'm gathering that together. Those lines are coming in at that point. The only thing is I don't want to bring it all the way together. I want that dark to be a little bit visible. And now for the top, watch me, really gather those lines together to a point at the top. And now we'll reduce that. I'm going to make 4 different layers of petals. The middle ones will be half of the amount of clay, and the outer ones half the amount of clay. So just going to cut it in half, that's all. Actually, this one goes to 15 centimeters. The idea is to cut off 1/3. So I have 2 smaller ones, and those are 1/3 the size of the 2 bigger ones. So 5 centimeters. The ones in the middle are 10 centimeters, and then 5 centimeters again. The sizes don't matter, but the proportions do. So there's the proportions for the flower. So this one will be reduced all the way down. I'm going to reduce it to 17.5 because I want 7 petals, and I want them each to be 2.5 centimeters tall. I want a 2.5 centimeter tall cane, which usually, honestly, I work at 2 centimeters, but that can be difficult to reduce. There's always the trade-off. It's difficult to work tall, but then it's easier to reduce. So this needs to be quite small. Look how teeny tiny that guy is. And see that the red stripe is still there. I'm going to cut it into 7 sections. Now I don't have the center yet because I didn't want to make the center because I had no idea how big the center should be and how much clay to use. So, see, they're hard to stack up at that 2.5 centimeters, but you get a general idea. I'll just eyeball it, how much clay to use. There's that extra dark too from the blends, or from the mixes. So this very, very tiny center part will be chopped up with lots of teeny tiny pieces. More tiny pieces than you'd have to expect. Take a while at that. And then when you gather them up, it's important that you can still see all the variation in there. If you just roll it up without gathering it the right way, parts of the cane will still only have like one solid color. So be careful how you gather that. There it is, wrapped in a dark sheet. And now I'm going to make 7 little triangles to go around it. You know, I don't know why the center works so well, but I just think the finished cane is so effective that I thought I'd stick with it. These dark triangles are larger. If I get that right, then I won't have to do another sheet around it. I want those to envelop the orange. If they don't, it's fine. Just add another sheet of orange around the whole, of dark around the whole thing. Cut off the messy ends, which is one reason why I had extra. Let's measure them to those petals. It's easier to have too much than too little. It can take a lot of time at this point in adjusting size. And that extra mixes up to a beautiful color anyway. Or you could use that as a cane by itself. But the important thing is that you'll have a nice center that isn't as maybe too big as it would have been otherwise. So I only ended up using half of that. What I'm going for in terms of size is I want enough room for those little petals to go around with space in between. The second layer is going to go all the way in and touch the center, so make sure there's space in between those little petals. So that makes a relatively big center at that point. This next one we're going to pinch fairly sharp and use my thumb and forefinger to make the space that front petal will take up. You know, you can keep the messy ends, or you can cut those off. The ends create some variety in the coloring, but it may not really be worth it. So that's looking good. I still need to reduce it. Same thing, 17.5 with 2.5 sections. And this is tricky work. You got to really settle those in there. If they're not working, reform them. Pinch some more. You can move the front petals around a little bit to kind of get them to fit in there. If it's getting too squishy, set it aside and work with it another time. So place them in there to touch the center and leave space. There's still each individual petals with spaces. Now we have 14 spaces in between all the petals. For this second 10-centimeter cane, they're going to fit in both sides. So this second set of petals will actually be 14 petals. This one needs to be pinched sharp to fit in between those petals, but notice that I'm pinching it it's offset. It's not pinched right in the center, and that's because it's going to fit, both sides of one petal. It doesn't matter where you cut that, just so that it's cut in half. And then we will repeat the steps for both of these, reducing it to that 17.5, cutting it into 7, but for both of that ends up to 14. Oh, what a squawky bird above my head. So all the desert noise. So there we go. It's on either side of that very first petal. See how that fits in? See why it needed to be a little off center? And then the other one, flip the other one off center in the other way. And I bet you can already imagine how tricky that can be. But I would encourage you to try it. In some ways it's forgiving because all that beautiful color still makes a fun flower, even if the flower looks a little messy. You could stop there, honestly. That's a beautiful flower. I'm going to try one more. If you've ever tried one of these mandala or multi-layered petals, what you realize that the coolest thing would be able to fit a petal behind the front petals. This has always kind of seemed too tricky for me, so I've never even tried it. I think there's so many things in clay that we just don't think we can, or I don't think I can, so I don't try. But this worked out fairly well, as a matter of fact. You can reduce a shape even like that. So here you can just watch some of the techniques I employed to try to reduce that. Same thing, we'll reduce it to the same size, cut up the seven petals. And these go over that big petal, in between the petals that we just added, the double ones. But see how sharply I need to pinch that? And I gotta move stuff around a little bit for each. I'm gonna tuck that in to that back petal. I think that looks really pretty. It sets really nicely in there. And that's why I gave you the proportions, so hopefully this all works well as far as sizing is concerned. Now I don't want those to be poking out. I don't want a very angly flower, so I'm going to press those in quite a bit. Also, if just one petal that's the wrong size, that's too short, will get swallowed and ruin the whole cane. So I'm taking some time now to just flatten it up and make sure that the center won't get swallowed too soon. You would think that I would need something a little more special since the outline is irregular, but I really want it just rounded out and squished in. Those petals will be separate, but not too pointy at all. And then I wrap it one more time. There it is. In some ways this is a large cane, but not nearly as large as it would be if you had just started from the center and kept building and building. You would have come up with a giant cane. That's why I gave you the proportions. I like this style. You have to be brave with this style, but see how I'm just squashing the whole thing? It seems to get into the center there and keep the center from being swallowed too soon. And then of course this technique as well. See how I seem to be able to save a good part of that. I really like how this is coming along. And even if I don't, that's a lot of cane left over. You really can't make this cane much smaller, unfortunately. I mean, you could try, but there it is. Woo! I love it. It turned out better than I even expected.